For startups hiring engineers and engineers looking to join them, this podcast is for you.
Hey, welcome to Your Next Tech Startup. I'm host Isabel Rasmussen. This is a now hiring episode. We are going to be having a conversation with Afshan, who just took on a role at a startup as a lead software engineer. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm very excited.
So you had never actually had to go through the experience of being a candidate until 2025. You had always been kind of, poached by a recruiter from one startup to another. You didn't have to go through the process of applying to roles. You did obviously have to interview for those roles that you got. The things that we're going to highlight that you learned and changed in your process to get hired was first how to get better at applying to jobs, how to be a strong candidate in interviews, and how to get comfortable with networking. And I think that you have taken such a thoughtful and thorough approach with this. I normally like these episodes to be short and to the point, but this will not be, because you have so many great learnings to share that I think are going to really help other people. And, you and I had connected through LinkedIn because this year you've done such an amazing job of really sharing and trying to help other engineers along with, your own journey of finding work. So a little bit of kind of how you ended up needing to look for work in 2025 is that there had been a layoff. You had been shocked by that. You took some time to plan budget-wise, kind of absorb the shock, which I highly recommend. People need that time before they jump into interviewing.
Well, thank you so much, Isabel, for inviting me to this conversation. And I'm really happy to pay forward whatever I have learned, help anybody who is in a similar situation now or in future, because we all have seen that applying for jobs and getting rehired is getting difficult, more and more difficult. So yeah, as you mentioned, I was laid off early January, and that was the first time I was without a job in a very long time. All my previous jobs, as you mentioned, came from direct recruitment efforts from recruiters or companies who wanted me to join them. Totally, the process at those days in those times were much simpler and faster. Basically, within a week or two, I was getting offers and accepting them. So yeah, now we have learned that there is just a lot of fake profiles and other spam applications coming to individual job postings, which is making it just very difficult for all of us to stand out. And those are the challenges which I learned to navigate in the past 6 months, 5 months of my journey.
I don't think that the fake applications is a huge problem. I actually think it's the layoffs that are the huge problem. As we're recording this, it was just announced 9,000 people from Microsoft were laid off. So the layoffs have just increased the pool of candidates in a way that in software engineering was never the case. 5 years ago, if I posted a lead software engineer role or a senior software engineer role, there was a really, really small chance that I could get good applicants, especially if it was in person. And be able to make a hire that way. Most tech recruiters spend a lot of time sourcing, which, fits perfectly with your career experience that you always had recruiters reaching out to you about new roles. And that's, as a tech recruiter, that's how we found good candidates. It was very rare for them to apply. And now there are a lot of really great candidates, especially for remote-based roles, applying. And it is a different problem space for recruiters and hiring managers. It's how to figure out which are the candidates to have conversations with. And some of them are definitely fake, or they're using ChatGPT in the interview to answer questions, which is a horrible experience. But yeah, I think it's the layoffs, and I probably blah blahed too much. Anyways, let's get into the aspect of applying to jobs. So what were you doing early on that you quickly figured out, oh, this is not a good idea?
Yeah, totally. Of course, my resume was not up to date. So the first steps, which I went through multiple iterations of just updating my resume and getting just insights from different sources on what is the best way to make it sharper and bring it to fit what I was looking for, what titles or what level of seniority I was at, and what was a reasonable position to look for. So that was the first step which I did. Of those applications were wrong because my resume was just not good enough. It was too long. Some of the jobs had too many bullet points. The others had just too little. And one thing which I really learned and sharpened following some of my recruiter connections and resume consultant connections on LinkedIn, it's all free advice basically, is that I should write my bullet points in the job description in each job to show my impact and achievements instead of what I did. Instead of writing it that way, I should write it what it achieved, whether it was a revenue improvement, whether it was productivity improvement, whether it was CI/CD performance, time reduction to production, or in some of my cases, I had onboarded new engineers, which helped productivity of the whole team so much better because now more developers are fast doing development and deploying new features, and that impacted our actual customers. So those are the impacts which I revisited my years of experience to write them correctly. And one thing I honed on was only 3 bullet points per job, and
I say 5.
Yeah, but 5.
5 for the 2 most recent and 3 for the ones before. And the reason why, like, I mean, you can do whatever 4, like, I think 3, especially if you've been somewhere for like 4 years, 3 bullet points, I'm like, that's all you did. So everybody has their own thing, but I like that you noted the onboarding engineers, because one of my pet peeves about resumes is I always say, I'm looking to see that you're a human. And that's not a reference to AI. That is a reference to, are you talking about how you work with other people? And so if all of your bullets are purely focused on technical achievements, and the hiring manager says, we want someone who has great communication skills, who's collaborative, who can partner with product, all of those things, then if I don't see any of that on your resume, how do I know that you actually can do that?
Yeah, so my 3 bullet point approach was that I have 3 skills I use during the interview, behavioral or introduction sections of the interview process, which I wanted to highlight. And that's something I learned, of course, later during the interview process, the whole 5 months of the journey. And the resume got better with those learnings. I ended up on the 3 bullet points much later in my maybe on the 3rd month, maybe like that. So the 3 bullet points align with the 3 skills I feel I have. I am my superpowers, basically. One is technical. I can do technical work, but I can do also project like leadership, some level of filling in the role, mentorship, leadership, and helping developer productivity. So those are my passions. That is something I bring. I'm not just a heads down individual contributor. I like to build teams as well. And the third thing is more interpersonal skills. I like to help developers find work-life balance or mentor them to just whatever their achievements are, like whatever their blockers are, just guide them around that. So those are the 3 things I feel I want to express during my interviews, and that's how I aligned each of my job to highlight that these are the things I have done consistently over the last many years.
I like that, the like kind of taking the advice and also then thinking, what are the things that are me? Because the resume, I think resumes, it's incredibly hard to have any sense of me in a resume. And that's in part why interviews are so important, is to get more of a sense of you. But I like that you thought about your bullets in a way that like represent who you are. And what's important to you in a role. And then that allows you to match roles better. And I think, talking about resumes is an important one for your journey because the role that you just took, you actually had applied for that job. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so initially, of course, I was doing all the wrong things, which was easy apply, and I was just bickering all the time. Hey, job application should be easier. Then I realized, oh my God, if it is that easy, we are all just mindlessly applying. And it has to have a resistance for us to actually feel the need to apply. Like, I need to know this is the job I am interested in for it to matter to me, right? So yeah, that easy apply was the was that mirage basically. We should stop chasing that.
See, I like easy apply, but I do most of my job postings in easy apply, but then I send these quick follow-up emails where with that startup I'm hiring for, if I've done a now hiring episode, I ask them to watch the now hiring episode and just tell me 3 bullets of why like the episode resonated with you. And so I kind of counter it. I counter the easy apply aspect with asking for a bit more, which I would have never done 5 years ago because I didn't have enough applicants. But you took a different approach to it, which was you applied directly on company websites.
Yeah, totally. That was a quick, like within like 2-3 weeks of applying, easy applying, and just doing that spray and pray type approach. I learned, okay, that is not going to work. It is a very iterative process. So I improve every maybe week or every 10 days. I did something better, which I think paid off. So one thing I did was instead of easy apply to some post which had hundreds because LinkedIn can only show 100. So if it is more than 100, I don't know if it's 500 or 1,000, it's more than 100. So if it is more than 100, I stopped applying to those, at least on that easy apply. If I could find that company, I would research the company, I would go to their website, and I would find a similar job and apply there. So it was still giving me ideas on which companies to look up, but I stopped applying through the easy apply. The other thing I did within LinkedIn was...
And let me share something really quick just so people understand on the recruiter side how things work a little bit. The easy apply lives in LinkedIn and doesn't cross over into the applicant tracking system of the company. So hiring managers were never seeing my easy apply candidates. I was filtering through and then moving them over. But there's a lot more opportunity, as you, I think, were aware of never being seen by the hiring manager in that easy apply option. Whereas if you go onto the company's website, apply directly through their ATS system, then the hiring manager, as long as they're active and aware of things, will definitely be able to see your resume. A lot of hiring managers are relying on other people to screen the resumes first.
Yeah, actually, I have helped hiring managers in my previous jobs to help them hire and screen candidates. So with HR, our HR person, they would forward a bunch of resume every week to us, and I would help my director to go through them and identify which ones to interview. So I have a little idea from one of the job that...
Well, and that's also, that's great experience to have, because then it's like, well, what was I looking for when I was looking at resumes? And I think a lot of people struggle so much with resumes, and I'm just like, this isn't that hard, but I have to remind myself I've looked at a million resumes at this point. I have no idea. So you apply directly through the website and for the job that you have now, and then you happen to apply for 2.
Yeah, I applied to 2 positions there, and one was one level senior then. So there was just one level difference between the 2. So one was a senior engineer and one was a lead engineer. I think I got I looked back in my emails and I got a rejection within a couple of days of it. So the more senior position.
For the lead one. Yeah. And I'll say, I think doing a lead and a senior is great. When I see someone apply, I'll have a front end role and a back end role or a DevOps role or something. And I don't like it when people apply to both of those because most engineers are much better at one or the other.
Yeah, right.
So strongly encourage people not to do that. But for your situation, a senior engineer and a lead engineer is really not that different.
Yeah, the tech stack was the same. It would be the same product I would be working on in both. It's just one had more the skills I think I can bring, like just the extracurricular or interpersonal skill like collaboration.
Right.
So anyways, I will tell you about what transpired in the interview where they realized. So let's go through that.
Right, we'll start
So
talking
yeah,
about
I
interviews.
applied to and got one auto whatever rejection within a couple of days, and the other one was not rejected, but I lost track of it because it went on for a couple of weeks before I heard back from them. So since I got already a rejection through my brain, I just thought it was gone.
Right. And one thing to clarify, so probably why that happened is, think about it. The recruiter looked at it for whatever reason, they didn't see the like the clear fit for lead role. So then they quickly reject that one. But they see the other one, and maybe, then they say to the hiring manager, hey, hiring manager, can you look at this? Let me know if you want to if we should talk to this person or not. And so, that where you were helping the director look through all those resumes, that candidate, that's resumes you were looking through, they didn't hear back within 24 hours of applying. They probably didn't hear back from the company that you were at for a couple of weeks. And that's often why the yeses can take longer than the nos.
Yeah. So that's good. Then I got a call from the recruiter, and he started talking. He said, I just want to make sure, we are a little late in reaching out to you, so I want to make sure you are still interested. And I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. And he asked me some questions about like salary and expectations, and I was good with that. He said, I would like to put you forward for the interview, and the interview process started. And the first one was the usual screen, the technical screen. First was the hiring manager, then the technical screen. And the third interview was with the panel. So product manager and engineer, another engineering manager and a designer.
And I'll pause you right there. Because a panel interview, I think terrifying is an accurate way to describe a panel interview. And so, one of the things, because I don't want us to go too far in the story without kind of talking about some of these other pieces, is, for interviewing for you, one of the things that you recognized as a challenge is that you identify as an introvert and you are neurodivergent. I am as well. So those aspects, make a panel interview more, I'm guessing like a salesperson who like loves talking to groups of people, panel interviews like, woo! But for the rest of us, I don't think that's the case. So talk a bit about how you kind of were able to get better at interviewing to be able to then obviously do great at this panel interview.
Totally. Because towards the end, like the last month of my interview journey, my interviews became so meaningful for me because of all the tips and tricks and pivots I did during the previous month. And those are so important for me because they have just made me a much better person. And that is part of it came from one of my conviction, which I want to talk about. I have a conviction that I will not affect or tie my effort for anything with the results of that effort. So that is something which helps me go through a process without being intimidated. That's something I have learned as a child.
So say that again. So you will not tie
my
effort with the results
of that effort. Yeah. If
I
tie my effort to, let's say, hey, I have to win this job, then I am constantly stressing about the outcome. I'm not present in the process. I'm not caring much about the process. I'm all about the outcome. And I have learned to disengage from the outcome. While I'm in the process, I can't control the outcome. I have to put my best effort first to hope for a better outcome. So that is some conviction I have from childhood.
So you can control effort, but you can't control outcome. Okay, right, which is obviously very true. Right, and so just focusing on, did I do a great job at controlling the amount of effort I put into this?
Yeah. And what that effort is, of course, that is a learning process. So I have learned how to show myself during the interview. That was a learning process. But one thing which I feel is I don't feel intimidated during panel interviews because of this childhood conviction. And if you want to hear the side story about it, I can tell you. I had learned when I was a kid from my teacher that if there is a dog or a dangerous animal, how to handle them. Like a bear here, like a big animal who can attack you, right? A big cat or lion or anything. You just stay and hold your ground and show that you are self-confident and you're not afraid. And the animal will detect that self-confidence, that conviction inside you, and bow to you basically, because they respect the strength of that other side. So that's why pack
Yes.
dogs and pack animals have a leader they respect, right? That is
Right.
something I had learned, and I didn't know what that meant actually. But one day I went to a neighbor farm, which is like a few acres of their land, and I just walked towards their door because I wanted to talk with them. They had 5 dogs on their property loose at that time. They all came running and just circled me.
And you were a kid.
I was a kid. I was a teenager. And I remembered I had to show these dogs I'm the boss. The conviction came in. I'm like, I can't run from here. These are 5 dogs. They are going to chase me all the way to my home. And I can't do it. So what do? I have to put my best face, best effort here, right here. I have to stand my ground. Yeah. So yeah, that's where my conviction comes from, that in the moment, I have to stay in the moment. I can't predict what will happen.
I had never thought about like being, my inner strong mom to
Mhm.
like let the bear know this is my space.
Mhm.
That is the persona that you need to bring into an interview, but it's actually so accurate. Like
Mhm.
you do need to be that strong,
Strong. That
I
strong
can't
self.
back down version of yourself. And I think you and I had talked a little bit about this, like, give me the job. Can I have the
Mhm.
job? Like, if there is a pack of dogs and it's like, please don't hurt me, dogs, like, then you're weak. And they sense
Yes.
that. And that day might have been a traumatizing day for you.
Totally. I would be torn apart in front of my mom, who was standing on the hill behind me,
God.
praying for me. And then the woman who owned the property, she came out and she was so surprised that this kid is like standing off with her 5 dogs she was hoping will protect her from any intruders. I'm like, yeah, I'm not an intruder. That's why I'm holding my ground.
Wow. So I think that's a great visual for people to think about when they're thinking about who the type of kind of energy you want to bring.
Yeah.
You also, there's this complicated balance of you don't want to also be like that egotistical asshole, and I think this bear or dog example is great because like if you had been like when I think of like really aggressive energy like that, if you'd gone that way, then in theory you would have like attacked one of the dogs, but then all of the other 4 dogs would have
Yeah.
attacked you. And so obviously that's not the route to go either, but it is that fine balance in the middle of like being very solid and strong.
Yeah, it's the strength part. It's like, yes, we all know in those moments and every other moment of the day that we need a job, but being needy and being impatient is not going to get us anything. We need to be our best self. And that comes with whatever measures you have, a childhood story, an inspiration, a human being you aspire to be, right? Bring any of those things into your mind before the interview starts. You have to be a strong person. That's the main thing. Not overconfident, not those. You
Right.
have to be strong and convey yourself with dignity, and that is what it is. Like we are needy, but we don't have to be showing or begging for a job. It's a
And you weren't
relationship we
needy.
need
You're a
to.
solid engineer. You have great experience. Like you landed a job. There was no need to be needy. You figured out your financials. So you're being yourself. It's not like you were lying and trying to get a job that you had no skills for.
Then a few other things which helped me be better during the interview. One is my just internal conviction. But the other, just my challenges, is due to introversion and autistic tendencies. I am never in a good mood to talk. Like this is not something I aspire to do on a daily basis, like talking, right? I enjoy real connections, and that takes time. At first interview, second interview is not enough for me to be in that right frame of mind, right?
Right.
Naturally. So I had to put myself through some discipline to actually get to that level of professional intimacy faster. And that was the challenge I had to get to. I had to learn and improvise.
Yeah. And I think, part of being good at interviewing and what I try to do with candidates is I try to help kind of get the conversation there faster. All sorts of whatever ways that I do it. But I'm aware of that need to help the person feel comfortable and build some feeling of professional friendship type dialogue early on when I start to interview people. But a lot of interviewers don't know how to do that.
There is a saying about introverts that extroverts adopt us. That's how we make friends, right? And that is the challenging part. Like, I lived in my comfort zone. I call it introverted comfort zone for so long, all my life. I lived like that. I got jobs, as we talked about it earlier, my previous jobs, without this opening up. But this time I had to. That is the part of the adaptation I did adopt. And how did I do it was I just changed my perspective. I learned from other people on LinkedIn how to be open about myself. I never thought anybody cared about what my story is. Those are those beliefs you have when you are growing up. I really put myself through a discipline of opening up, talking to people. And as I mentioned, I only can do it if I am genuinely connecting with somebody. So that genuine, authentic connection is what I spent my energy on. Instead of looking for jobs, I actually looked for connections. And that is the change in my perspective, which I brought to interviews too. That was my challenge, and that is what I did to overcome that challenge by opening up during non-interview, no stress, no interview type situations on LinkedIn with people, in DMs and comments of big famous people where hundreds of people are commenting. My comments don't mean anything, but I still wanted to express myself, take my space in the world. Those are the things I pushed myself to do.
Yeah, I do think, I've heard that. I know in another Just Hired episode, we talk about connection and that it is an important part of, I think there's, a couple of aspects of it. Unfortunately, there is this like that I like that person, so therefore I'm going to like pass them for this interview dynamic that isn't the best way to do interviews because it can be biased and exclude a lot of groups of people. But it happens. And so there's that, but there's also that when the candidate is feeling comfortable and connected, it is easier for them to feel comfortable asking questions. It's easier for them to be their authentic self. And when you're your authentic self, then you can highlight how great of an engineer you are. And then therefore, obviously you interview better.
Yeah, the ease of expressing myself started to like compound basically for me. I started noticing that I didn't have any of that heart racing, that like, oh, I'm going to perform badly here, because I was expressing my true self. I was accepting myself and expressing it. That's something I had to overcome, of course, and practice. One other tip about how I practice it, if anybody else is an introvert and is listening, is that I actually started talking to my phone. I never do that. Oh my God. My husband tells me, why is your phone always on silent? I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody on the phone. I don't like it. I want to talk face to face, stuff like that, right?
Okay.
And then I'm like, why would I talk to a piece of hardware? It's just so impersonal. And then I started practicing my talking skills to this void I wanted to
So you're not even like
overcome.
calling a friend and talking to them. You're just talking.
No, recording. Yeah, just transcription. I turn on the mic and start talking, and it just takes my voice and convert it into text. And I just read it later and see how many times did I pause, how many things did I say wrong, how many times did I say things like that.
Yeah.
So I overcome my anxiety around talking to a stranger. That's for introverts, it's a big thing. We don't open up enough in our lives to be comfortable around people who we have just met. It's just a challenge for us. So
And
I
I want to
had to
pause you for a
overcome.
sec. In general, I do coaching every once in a while, but if I'm like coaching a candidate on interviewing, I recommend that they do that with the phone. That they like, especially with behavior interview questions. So, like, pull up 10 behavior interview questions, give an answer to the question, record that answer. Then you can I don't recommend it for just the practice of saying it out loud, even though that I do think is helpful. And then and then take the transcription, put it into like, you can, yeah, like you said, like see those patterns of your communication, but then you can like put that into whatever LLM and get like the feedback on how could the answer to this question be improved, what's missing in this answer, those kind of things. And along with that, like even when you're doing that live with someone, trying to keep the answer to a couple of minutes, and then is there anything that you wanted me to go deeper on, is always great.
I actually used what you just mentioned, like putting all those raw notes I had recorded into the LLM and ask it to give it to me in bullet points or story in a story pattern. And yeah, I then read it again and I say, oh yeah, that's conveying what I actually was thinking. So LLM can fill in some of the words I had missed. So yeah, it helped build I have like around 40 different Word documents now where this is my story. This is how I handled a tough situation. This is how I handled a conflict with a colleague or missing a deadline. All of those behavioral questions, exactly as you are saying, I talked to myself about them and then I fed it to LLM to spit it out back in a more refined way. And that's how I got prepared for the behavioral part so well
Yeah.
that I overcame any anxiety, any hesitations about it. And I started enjoying my interviews so much after I reached that level of when I unlocked that
Yeah,
level.
that's so great to hear that you're enjoying your interviews. And I want to be conscious of time, but let's just, spend another couple minutes on what are the other things that you did around networking that really helped you?
So I have actually joined a local Slack channel of Colorado startups and communities, and I actually reached out to people there too and said I am open to work and I'm interested in these areas. I got an interview from there too. That was really enjoyable. It went a panel interview also. So that was one effort I did and was successful in getting interviews from there too. In terms of networking, I just feel I have made friends, I've made long-term connections, and my main reason for networking was not finding some immediate results like a job. It's something I'm continue to do. I know people disappear after they find job. They probably just leave LinkedIn. I am not leaving LinkedIn. I am posting daily because it's not just finding something, it's finding myself. I'm discovering myself through these efforts I am doing. I'm putting myself through challenges and I'm overcoming them, and I think it's a very good journey. I'm just recreating myself.
I love it. Yeah, I think your process of taking something that um, getting laid off and going through that is traumatic. And, oftentimes we grow the most as humans when we have to go through really hard times. And you are such a beautiful example of that. I do want to just end on the fact that while you had been, because I can see your LinkedIn right now and I see lead software engineer as your title.
Mm-hmm.
So what had happened is you had been interviewed for that senior role.
Mm-hmm.
You did such an incredible job that you then got the lead role that they had originally thought wasn't the right fit for you.
Totally. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
really surprising.
I have absolutely loved just getting to know you and networking with you. And I look forward to continuing to do that for years to come. Thank you so much for being on this episode. And hopefully we'll have you on a future episode where you talk about interviewing. And because, I think learning how to become a great candidate, this has been a great story, but learning how to be a great interviewer is something that is critical to hiring. And I think because of the passion and empathy that you bring into probably everything that you do, I'm hoping for a conversation on that.
Be really glad and honored to be on another episode with you. Really enjoyed talking with you and really just glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.